Hey guys, how you going? My name's Lecky.
And I'm Avi.
And this is Season 1, Episode 4, and the theme today is Q&A. So the breakdown of this vlog today is we're going to answer common questions that we get, and I can't remember the first Q&A topic.
No, this is the first Q&A.
Oh, it's the first?
Yeah.
Okay, bit of nerves still, even though it's Episode 4. So what we'll do is we'll go back and forth. We got 2 examples each on common questions we get in the clinic. We thought we'd address them here once and for all, so we can point to it as a reference in the future. Cool. Anything to add?
No, it's pretty straightforward. So let's get into it.
Cool. All right. So I'll go first, and I would say this is the number one question that I would get for any new person that I meet. What's the difference between physio, osteo, and chiro? I think this is Avi's first year out, and how many times do you think you've gotten that question?
I'd say maybe at least once or twice a week. People coming in, so it's quite often. And I'd actually like to hear Lecky's point of view on this.
So I am 12 years out, and I still don't have a great answer. So sometimes I get caught off guard when I'm treating somebody, and I just feel like I'm digging myself a hole or I'm going down a rabbit's warren. So I thought today the easiest way would be to break down what the actual terms mean, because there's a whole scope of what physio can offer. That's what Avi and I are, and we're respectful of the other trades too, and they also offer expertise. So I'm going to try and keep it really simple, and Google's a really good friend. So I'm going to start with our good friends osteopathy, osteopaths. Okay, so osteo is, the root word means bones, and pathy, the root word, means basically a disorder. So with osteopathy, it's a disorder stemming from the spinal system generally, and that could mean a whole spectrum of things. But I would say that with how they go about their business, it's very similar amongst all three. So physio, chiro, and osteo, very similar, but I would just like to point out the definition of the actual terms. Okay, so we'll start with that first. Osteo, bone disorder. If we go with chiropractic, chiro means hands, and practi means practice. So in my simple mind, that means they're really good with their hands. Okay, so it's the practice of techniques in trying to help treat different conditions. And again, if you hear of chiros, what do you think of? You think of click clack, and a lot of that is a very hands-on manipulative technique. And again, I'm keeping it really general, and that's the definition of those terms. Okay, now if we move to physiotherapy, physio comes from the root word which is Greek, and it's physis. Okay, apologies to my Greek friends if I'm not saying that properly. Natural, so physio, natural, and therapy comes again from the Greek word which means healing. So again, in my simple mind, physiotherapy is the art of allowing the natural process of your health to return back to homeostasis, or getting you back to full health using natural therapies. Okay, so it could be a movement disorder, so we try and help your functional movement. It could be a weakness problem, so we allow nature to take its course by strengthening you. And it could be into other disorders too that I'm really interested in, like chronic health disease. So I guess in my summary, this Q&A, my answer would be pointing you towards the meaning of the words, and I'd probably start off there. I got to really have a good 1-sentence spiel on the difference between chiro, physio, and osteo, but I'd start there. So physio, quick summary: natural healing, it's a broad spectrum. Chiropractic, good with their hands, click clack. And 3, osteopathy, bone disorder. Okay, that's my first Q&A, and I will have to revisit this in the future, but I think I'm going to start there. Okay?
Nice.
Avi, over to you.
Alright, so mine's a little bit about the actual injury. So low back pain cause, and just one of the many reasons why low back usually occurs, because there's plenty of reasons that it can happen. I'm just going to go in detail to one of the reasons that usually happens, but here we go. So pretty much think of your low back as a tool. Most of the time when you get low back pain, low back's doing all the work. Okay, so it does all the heavy lifting. You're sitting down, you're bending, you're reaching, you're twisting. Any of those movements, usually your low back's just been compensating for a while, and it's usually been ongoing for a few years. And that's usually because a couple of other muscles are sort of letting you down. Most of the time, it's usually the core or the glutes, or mix of both. So when you ask people, when I usually ask, what do you do for core? And most of the time they're just like, oh, yeah, I do a couple of sit-ups, I do crunches, and yeah. So I'm like, yeah, not too bad. But core is a broad spectrum. It's made of multiple muscles, even the lats are part of the core. And then the rec abs are just one part of it. So there's your tummy muscles, then you got a couple of muscles at the back. So there's plenty of muscles that make up the core. So the good protocol that me and Lecky have been using is the McGill Big 3. So we might go into more detail in our future vlogs, but just if you want to have a bit more of a read, just look into the McGill Big 3. It's pretty straightforward. Uses like three simple exercises that can be done by anyone, and then it just goes in more depth. So let's go back into why low back pain sort of happens. So what happened, think about it, you're in a construction site and there's 3 people, and just imagine one of them is your low back, one's your core, one's your glutes. I'd say 2 of them go on a holiday in the 2 weeks, so they're just skipping out on work, and the one is just stuck there and it's struggling and working for 2 weeks. Who's the one that's going to complain? So I'd say probably the one that's stuck at work. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, I would.
Yeah. So the one that's stuck at work, the other 2 enjoying having pina coladas and stuff on the beach, and then they come back and that one would be fatigued, tired, and just like pretty cooked. So how's that relate? So think of that guy that's stuck at the construction site. That's the low back. So your low back's been doing all the heavy lifting, low back's doing all the work, whereas your core and the glutes have sort of just settled down and just been like, nah, I'm taking a holiday, I don't need to work. And then, yeah, so pretty much they've done nothing, and then overloading your back, and then there comes your back pain because it's just been working too hard, becomes tight, your muscles start to stiffen up. You might get a disc pain. So what's disc pain? Usually, most of the case, if you get pain when you're sitting for too long, or if you struggle to bend, or a mix of both, and walking usually helps a little bit. So that's one of the main reasons. So if you do have a nice strong core, because I'm big on the core, think of it, even when you look at the building sites, what's the main thing they do? They get the nice big core stability from all their pillars and stuff before they actually go on the building site, before they build up everything else. So if you've got a strong core, likely chances of you getting low back is lessened by a fair bit. So that's my little spiel on the low back and one of the main causes. So just don't overcook your low back and strengthen your core and glutes.
Yep, sage advice there from Harvey. So again, I really like, that's the first time I've heard the construction site analogy, so I might have to pinch that. Now, my second common Q&A that I get in the clinic is when to use heat and when to use cold therapy, ice packs, things like that. So again, in my simple mind, I want to figure out the type of person that's coming in with the particular type of problem, okay? So I've broken this down into injury. So if you've copped an injury, you're playing footy on the weekend, and you copped a whack, you pulled up pretty sore, there's a particular game plan, and we're just keeping this really general, right? So do you want to go heat or cold? So in my little sheet here, I've got injury in the first 3 to 5 days. Just got to be mindful that a response to injury is normal. And what's normal response to injury? It's going to be swelling, okay? And so what you'd want to do is minimize too much swelling, but at the same time, it's trying to do a good job. So you're kind of trying to, balance out the good with the bad. So there's a lot of recent literature that's come out about icing, and we can address this directly in a future podcast. But I would say in the first 3 to 5 days, I would just focus mainly on resting and try not to make the injury worse. Okay, so if you focus on the resting purely, whatever that means to you, that's a really good start. And if you want to add in the icing on top of that, that's fine too. Okay, so there's a RICE protocol that we're all familiar with: rest, ice, compress, elevate. Again, we'll touch on this in a future vlog, but for now, I would emphasize not making the injury angrier. So trying to keep it light off your feet, or if you've got a shoulder injury, just trying to avoid the movement, immobilize as best you can. And then you can layer in a bit of ice if you wish. for 3 to 5 days. Okay, now there isn't really a set science on how long you should be icing. It varies. It could be a couple of times a day, 10 to 15, 20 minutes apart. I think something would be better than nothing, but at the same time, I would say 80% of the focus should be resting, and then the 20% should be icing in the first 3 to 5 days, okay, for an injury. Now, for heat versus cold, for something that's longer than 5 days, I would recommend getting yourself moving and using heat, okay? So not to dive too deep into the science, usually what you want is good blood flow, and good blood flow helps with good healing, and that will get you back on your feet sooner rather than just staying off your feet for too long, okay? So again, I really want to keep this big picture. Injuries that are fresh, so from day dot to day 5, rest it, and then add in some icing, and then after day 5, I'd be heating it. Okay, now this is purely talking about injuries. If you're looking at performance and quality of life, okay, in terms of heat and icing, that is another big topic that we can address later down the track. But for now, in terms of when should you use heat and when should you use ice, the first 3 to 5 days are really key. And at the same time, in optimal recovery, I would say rest is going to be a key thing. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Those are my 2 cents.
Nice. So as like you mentioned, rice, I think it's coming in, as new research has shown, it's one of the older protocols now.
It is.
And the new one we might discuss in the next vlog, it's peace and love. So
it's an acronym.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that one a bit later on, and I'll go into my second question. So why are my upper traps always tight? So what's the upper traps? Usually these muscles here, and that can usually have tight neck. And I probably say anyone that usually comes in with upper body pain besides low back, I'd say most of the time they have a bit of upper trap tightness. Wouldn't you agree? Would you get many of them?
Yeah, heaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And then so fair few of them come in and they're always like, why is it always tight? Why? And I get massage, I get everything, but it's just
yeah, heaps.
dry needling, and it just still keeps coming back tight. So most of the time, how I like to look at it, think about everything we do, it's pretty much forward facing. So what I like to ask most of my clients is, what do you do to strengthen your back muscles? And they're like, oh, not much, I don't really do anything, I just do a bit of this. And you're like, and in my head I'm thinking, all right, so they don't do much back work, so what's that doing? So think about it, our head's like a bowling ball, so pretty heavy. I stole this one from Lecky. So it's like a bowling ball, pretty heavy. And then imagine our back muscles haven't been working for a while, because everything we do is forward facing, like you're typing, you're on your phone, you're looking at your phone, you're doing chippy or bricklaying or whatever, don't know. And then whatever it is, it's pretty much forward. So your chest, your arms, your shoulders all become nice and strong. And then eventually when you do it for so long, you see little people, the shoulders just start to cave in into that position. And then what happens there? The back muscles, they're working, but they're not working as hard. So they're pretty much going to sleep. So they're like, oh, I don't need to work hard. What's the point? Because I'm not doing anything. And then what happens? Shoulders roll in, and then pretend our head's quite heavy. So like the bowling ball. And then to hold our head up right, otherwise our head would just fall straight down. These bad boys have to work hard to hold you up. Otherwise your neck would just be sloppy and eventually, just falling around. And then when they get tight, and they got really, really tight and cooked themselves, so then the neck starts to take in the smaller neck muscles. So they're designed to do a little bit of movement but not take a lot of the heavy load. And so the neck becomes stiffer even quicker. And then once the neck's stiff, the top 2 points at the area send a message to your head to give you a headache. And that's one of the reasons you get headaches from, like, just upper trap tightness. And then, so how do we really deal with that? One quick fix: do some strengthening for your back muscles. Pretty much I'd recommend at least daily, do something daily, even if it's just normal, just bring your shoulders back and down. So, but the main thing you do that, make sure what you don't want to do is go back, up and back. Okay, up and back. What's that do? Turns these on. As soon as I lift my shoulders up, they're turned on, and they're already doing pretty heavy work. So what you want to do is find your weakness, and it's usually the back muscles, the lats, or the rhomboids, any other thing, muscles, or retractor muscles that bring it back in like that. So when they're tight, when they're not working as hard because they haven't been working for a while, they're usually pretty weak. So what you need to do, get them stronger, and eventually they'll start taking the stress off there. And because when you tell someone, I'll fix up your posture, everyone just goes like that. Yep, good posture, but can you maintain it for how long? Then you forget about it, then you go back into your normal, because that's not your normal. So if you got stronger back muscles, like the rhomboids and all the retractor muscles, don't worry about the names, and they're working hard and then doing their job, you automatically sit back, and that's your normal position without even thinking about it. And then what happens? You're in normal position, these don't have to work as hard, they don't become tight, and then eventually neck doesn't get tight either, and then everything's doing its normal, and bang, there goes, disappears your headache, there disappears your upper trap tightness. And the other main reason why they become tight is stress levels. So stress level. So just try and think of a couple of stress measures that like he's got some good pointers on stress measures. Do you want to point out some good?
Yeah. So I would say my top 2 is really focus on your stress management by focusing on your sleep. Because if you're not sleeping so well, then obviously you're going to wake up pretty grumpy. And generally, I'm big on the food side of things. So there could be some things that can make you a bit angry internally, and then that can manifest some of the stress stuff. But again, don't want to go too far into the rabbit hole there. But Avi's got some good points there, and something just on that posturally, right? If you're looking at gun athletes, and I would put gymnasts up the very top there, almost, because if you think about them, they have awesome strength, but then they also have awesome flexibility. And if you look at any type of gymnast, you can just see how symmetrical they look. Nice broad shoulders, chest out, and they're not prancing around, sticking their chest out. That's just how their framework is kept up against gravity, because they got really good, strong muscles. Because typically, we're always doing, as Avi said, a lot of things out in front. So if for most lay people doing too much out in front on the computer, loading the dishwasher, taking the bin out, chasing after kids, you drag forward. And so I might be biased because I like doing gymnastics training at home. But if you're watching Olympic Games, man, the gymnasts are just carved out of marble. So great point. So upper traps tightness is because of a lot of imbalance of the muscle we're pulling. So those are our Q's and A's, 2 of them. So hopefully you learned a little bit about the differences between physio osteochiro. I know it was a bit of an overview. We can dive a bit deeper. Avi's point about low back pain. I followed up with heat versus ice packs. And then the final point about upper trap tightness. So I hope you guys found a lot of value in it. We can dive a little bit deeper. I think for the first couple, we just want to take a step back and look at big picture stuff. And then we can assign one whole vlog on, we can do one whole vlog on ice or rice rather, because there's some changes afoot. So pretty successful episode number 4.
Yeah. So if you got any questions and questions that you want answered, just pop a comment below on our videos, and then we might bring it in the next Q&A, and at least you get an answer, and that way you don't have to come and see a physio or someone. We'll try and answer it the best of we can. So
remember, physiotherapy, natural healing. Okay, we're all about that. All right, guys, signing out. See you next time.
See ya.